Be sure to stick around to the end of the episode to hear about my weird ghost story. I'm Skye.
I'm Kyler.
And this is Histories, Mysteries, and Conspiracies. Today, I am talking about the dark history of the Donner Party. And you know a bit about the Donner Party, don't you?
Yeah, I did basically, so in college, I took a class, it was Introduction to Biostatistics, where we learned logistic regression, and the data set that we kept on coming back to was the Donner Party. So Donner.
There you go. Not to be confused with Jeffrey Dahmer. Yeah, similar the cannibalism, but
Donner. Yeah, but
spoiler alert. There's cannibalism.
Really interesting. Basically, see what groups of people were going to be the ones that survived, and it turned out that statistically, young women, the probability of their survival was, technically, if we're doing a logistic regression, it'd be odds of their survival were considerably greater than all the other types of people. So
my sources for this include legendsofamerica.com, which talks about it. Also, there's a couple articles on History Channel, and then also Last Podcast on the Left covered the Donner Party. So actually, I was going to cover the Donner Party like months ago when Last Podcast on the Left did it, but I was like, you know what? I don't want to be a copier immediately, so I'll do it later. So here's later. Now, let's get into it. So the Donner Party, they're from not Ohio, not at all, Illinois. Springfield, Illinois, and they wanted to go to California. You know the Oregon Trail?
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but California instead. But the trail was similar. Like, it was basically the same trail, and then it branched off into California. So. Did
they die of dysentery?
It didn't say anybody died of dysentery.
That's disappointing.
Maybe they did, and they just didn't clear. A lot of people died, so. They left April 16th, 1846, and James Reed was actually the original leader, so it was the Reed Party initially. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to go to California because his wife had headaches, and he thought the sunshine would help her, and also they just wanted them dollar bills.
This reminds me a lot of the Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yeah. That one short on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just think about that for.
Yeah.
This.
Well, no, I understand. I know what a wagon train is, and so was this Reed guy the lead then?
Yeah, that's why it was the Reed Party.
Well, I mean, like, was he the guy from the movie? You know, it was him and I can't remember the other guy's name. One would drive the front, one would drive the back, and that was their job. They'd pay.
No.
People would be paid to be led through the trail.
No, he wanted to take his whole family there.
Oh, so he was just the lead person in the wagon train instead of
he was like
the
in
guide
charge,
or anything like that. Okay,
so the Reed Party, James Reed followed this book called The Emigrant's Guide to Oregon and California by Lansford Hastings. You remember that name because he is important. Hastings was like, there's a new shortcut across the Great Basin. It's going to be great. Cuts off 300, 400 miles from your route. You'll get there faster. But the route was never actually tested. So there's that. A little bit of foreshadowing. Now, the original group was 32 men, women, and children. There was the Donner family, the Graves family, Breens, Murphys, Eddies, McCutcheons, Kesebergs, and Wolfingers, and then there was Teamsters and Bachelors. So Teamsters were the ones who drove the wagons and stuff.
That seems like a lot of families for only 32 people.
Yeah, you'd think. They also brought Margaret Reed's mother, Sarah Keyes, and she was sedentary and sick with consumption, which, do you know what consumption is?
I don't know.
Tuberculosis.
Interesting.
Yeah, I did. I was like, what is consumption? Because another person dies from it, and then apparently it's TB.
Yeah, go all fucking Red Dead Redemption 2 on us. Spoiler alert.
So Reed was really wealthy, so he built a giant wagon. It was 2 stories, had a stove, had nice seats, little bunks, super fancy. It was supposed to take 4 months for them to make it to California. And they first stopped in Independence, Missouri, and it took them about 3 weeks to get there. This is where they resupplied, and after that, they would keep moving, and then they were joined by another large wagon train led by Colonel William H. Russell, which was camped on that was camped on Indian Creek. And then now the group grew to 87 people.
So these people going west with the promise of land and wealth?
I don't know. Wealth was one of the big things.
Because
I know in the Buster Scruggs they get land if they go to Oregon.
Well, that's not just in Buster Scruggs. Like that's a
I know,
thing.
but I'm saying like
the government wanted people to go west, so
my source didn't specify why they went there. I think it was just like a money thing.
Yeah, because you would get acres of land and a certain amount of money to tend to your acres of land if you moved west, basically.
Possibly. So then on May 25th, they were stuck at Big Blue River because of high water, and this is near present-day Marysville, Kansas. And this is where Sarah Keyes died, and they just buried her next to the river. Now, at this point, William Russell resigned as captain, and then William M. Boggs became captain. That's not like a super important detail. The group then reached Fort Laramie, just 1 week behind schedule, June 27th, 1846. Just 1 week. Now, here they ran into James Clyman, who was a friend of Reed's, and he told Reed, he's like, don't take Hastings route. But while they were there, they also received a letter from Lansford Hastings, which said that he would meet the pioneers. For some reason, I thought my notes said prisoners. He would meet the pioneers at Fort Bridger and lead them through the shortcut. So they were like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. So they ended up sticking to the Hastings route. And then on July 19th, the group split. So this is where it goes from like Oregon Trail or Hastings route. So most of them decided to go on the original trail, and just some of them decided to go on the Hastings route, which was still untested. And then once this group split, the group following Hastings route elected George Donner as the group leader. Thus, the Donner Party is formed. Then the group arrived at Fort Bridger on July 28th, and there was no sign of Hastings. He wasn't there. But there was a note that said that Hastings left with another group and that they should all just try to catch up with him.
Bet you that group doesn't exist.
While they were there, they repaired wagons, got their stuff prepared because there was only supposed to be 7 weeks left of travel. And they left Fort Bridger on July 31st and joined the McCutcheon family, which made the group 74 people.
Only 7 weeks of travel.
Only. Just a brief. On August 6th, the party reached the Weber River, where they found a note from Hastings, which was literally like on a shrub, that told them to not follow him because it was impassable, but instead take a trail through the Salt Basin. And then while they were camping at present-day Hennifer, Utah, James Reed and 2 other men went ahead to catch up with Hastings, and they found him on the south shore of Great Salt Lake, and then Hastings came back with Reed to point out a new route. So he just kind of like looked around and was like, that looks pretty good. And then they followed that. And during that time, the Graves family also caught up with the Donner Party, making the group 87 people.
So this Hastings guy, what was his credibility?
I don't think there was any. I think he like one time took the Oregon Trail and was like, you know what would be better? Not this. And just kind of looked at a map, looked at like a really shady map of those days, you know, the ones that say California's an island.
Hey, no, fun fact. So this is where I can contribute. Anytime you see California drawn on as an island, it is a Spanish map, because in that period of time, if a thing was an island and you settled on it first, you claimed the whole island. Therefore, the Spanish knew that California was abundant with resources and potentially gold and shit like that. So they knew that if they could claim California as a whole, they would be well off. So they drew maps as California as an island so that they could attempt to claim the entire thing instead of just claiming certain sections or certain territories of it. The entire time knowing, in fact, that California was not an island. So, if you ever see a map with California as an island, there's some, black magic fuckery trying to be happening. And
also, you're rich.
Yeah.
If you have one.
Sure.
Yeah. Basically. That's what I learned from Pawn Stars.
Yeah. Fun fact.
Okay. Well, so now it's August 11th, and the group began to trek through the Wasatch Mountains, and it took forever. 6 days to travel 8 miles.
Shit.
Yeah. You just do the quick maths in your head there?
No, I mean that's not You don't need that many seconds to do that maths, but it took me. I paused to for dramatic effect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they had to abandon some of the wagons because they just were getting stuck and it was too much work. And the group was just getting pissed off. Like, they were super mad at Lansford Hastings because he has no idea what he's doing. And then they got mad at James Reed because he was the leader of this group that, like, led them there and decided to follow Hastings. And then...
Well, to be fair, they are all the ones that decided to go on Hastings' route in the first place. The other people are smart and took the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, but they wanted to blame somebody.
Right, but
for their mistakes.
Their selves are to blame.
Yeah, that's true.
So...
Now, on August 25th, the group lost their second member to consumption, which, that's not terrible, considering how contagious TB is.
Yeah.
I mean, losing two in all that time, that's not bad.
At Red Dead Redemption, Arthur gets it because a guy coughs on him. And, yeah. No one else in the party gets it, surprisingly, or the gang. So, but yeah, I'm somewhat of an expert in tuberculosis now.
Because of Red Dead Redemption?
Yes.
Oh.
There's no cure.
At this time, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so on August...
It's an instant death threat.
On August 25th, I just said that. On August 30th, the group began to cross the Great Salt Lake Desert, and Hastings was like, it'll be 2 days. So here... the sand was moist and deep, which basically means super awful to cross through with dry wagons and oxen. And oxen actually ran away. Like, it says on the website I found that they lost 32 total, but I don't know if 32 oxen ran away at this point in time. Either way, not great. Not great situation.
I mean, other ones probably died or killed, eaten, break their leg and get shot.
Yeah. I don't know, but they lost 32 total. And the wagons were getting bogged down, and there was no water supply. Well, there was very low water supply. And it ended up taking them 5 days to make it through the desert. In addition to their depleted supplies, William McCutcheon and Charles Stanton were sent ahead to Sutter's Fort in California to bring back supplies. So they had a big, long journey ahead of them, too. Now, while they were gone, the party made it to Humboldt River on September 26th, and this was the location that Hastings' new trail met up with Hastings' original path. So when he was like, just follow this way, that finally met up with his originally drawn map. But it ended up adding an extra 125 miles through mountains and desert to get there. If you remember, the original Hastings path was supposed to take out like 350 to 400 miles. So...
I mean, they're still ahead.
Yeah. Time-wise, they're not doing great, though.
Yeah, but mile-wise, they're doing all right.
I guess. So, from there, the Donner Party reached the junction with the California Trail, and then they traveled along the Humboldt River for 2 weeks. Everyone was getting, a lot of tension was happening with the group. And then on October 5th, a teamster, John Snyder, the wagons were stuck, and he was super frustrated, and he just began to whip the oxen. James Reed was like, and he told him to stop, and Snyder didn't, so he just stabbed him.
Stabbed him where?
In the gut, and he died.
Cool.
And then the group voted to banish Reed with nothing but a horse, which was basically death at that point.
Yeah, I remember this from the other podcast, yeah, and then his daughter or whatever gives him guns and goes off and joins a war or whatever, yeah.
Yep.
That doesn't seem important.
The rest of the group tried to give the animals a break. As many people walked as they could. And then on October 7th, Louis Keseberg kicked out a Belgian man named Hardcoop, who had been traveling with him. He just, wasn't doing well. He was super sick, really old, useless man. And they last saw him... Well, he kept knocking on people's wagons, or whatever you do when you're on the trail, and no one would let him in. And he was last seen under a sage bush, exhausted and left to die.
Cool.
Poor Hardcoop. On October 12th, the group was attacked by the Paiute Indians. I'm really bad with...
I think it's Paiute.
Native American tribes names. Paiute Indians. And they killed 21 of the oxen with, poisoned arrows.
Cool. So they're at 53 total down?
Yeah. It's not great.
I mean, how many oxen did they start with?
A lot. Well, James Reed's wagon himself, his, 2-1, had 8 oxen on it. Required 8 oxen just to pull that one wagon.
Okay.
So... I think they had 30 something.
I mean,
wagons.
Okay, so 8 times 30.
I think 8 was a lot. So let's say 4.
4 times 30? Okay.
So we'll say that. And then on October 16th, they reached the gateway to the Sierra Nevada on the Truckee River. 3 days later, on October 19th, Charles Stanton returned laden with several mules with beef, flour, 2 Indian guides, and news of a clear but difficult path through the Sierra Nevada. William McCutcheon, though, he was sick, so he just stayed at the fort. And then the caravan camped for 5 days, 50 miles from the summit, resting their oxen for the final push, which everything is like, and that was like the worst decision yet. But like every time they paused and like waited was the worst decision yet, basically.
Well, at this point, they should have probably just wintered.
Well, they were in the mountains.
Not yet.
They're 50 miles from the summit.
Oh, I was thinking that they were still in the desert.
Nah, they're in the mountains. It's really bad. So on October 28th, James Reed arrives at Sutter Fort, and he ran into William McCutcheon, and they were like, hey, we should have a plan to go back. So they tried to go back, but there was snow, and then it stopped them. So they were like, well, let's find more recruits. But then the war was going on, and you already know what happened. Reed goes and joins the war for some reason. But they did think the group still had the oxen that the Native Americans killed. And so they were like, oh, they're fine. They still have 21 oxen to eat. Well, all those oxen to eat. But they didn't. Now, while this was happening, George Donner's wagon broke. And so his little group had to stop and fix it, which included cutting down trees and doing all this stuff. And during that time, he cut his hand and he hurt it really badly. So they were super behind the rest of the group. During this time, the Sierra Pass was about 12 miles away, and the wagon train attempted to go through it, but there was already 5 feet of snow. So they couldn't do it. So they decided to stay at the eastern end of a lake, which would end up being called Donner's Lake, where the ground was level and there was a lot of timber, and there was like a crappy little cabin already there, basically like a little tent that somebody already popped up for them. So they're like, well, there's already kind of shelter here, so this is good. And so the Donners were about 6 miles behind, so all of these groups were just making little tents, trying to survive and like kind of try to wait out the snow a little bit. I mean, it was October, late October, but still. Now, the group at Donner Lake did try to go over the pass 2 more times, but at this point it was 20 feet of snow. So they fully gave up. We're like, okay, let's just bunker down, create lean-tos, tents, cabins, whatever we can. Some sort of shelter. Then the group ended up killing the last of their oxen on November 29th, which was Thanksgiving, because it snowed that day. I don't know if it was because it snowed that day. The internet made a point to say that it snowed on that day. Now, on December 15th...
They killed it because it was Thanksgiving?
Probably. The snow probably didn't help. I don't know.
They probably just killed them because
they were hungry.
The other 2 seem anecdotal at best.
They're just like fun facts, coincidence.
Yeah.
Now, on December 15th, Ballas Williams died, supposedly of malnutrition.
Who the fuck is this guy?
I don't know. He's just... he's important.
Why are you talking about it then?
Because he was a catalyst.
That
he
means
died.
nothing.
He died of malnutrition, and the group was like, we're gonna die. We need to do something. So because of his death, a group got together with 5 men, 9 women, and 1 child. And they all got snowshoes, and, well, not all. Most of them had snowshoes. And they departed to reach Sutter's Fort to tell them, hey, we are dying. We need supplies. We need help.
I like how they just sort of like, you know what? Let's bring this random child along.
I know, I was wondering that too. I was like, why would they bring that kid? But okay. So they barely had any rations, and they were already super tired. On the 6th day, they ran out of food, and no one ate while they traveled the next 3 days. Charles Stanton was snowblind, because apparently this is a thing. So if it's, you know how snow is super bright, you can just like go blind from it. Like you can go temporarily blind, and then that can get worse, and then you can go totally blind. But so he couldn't see what was going on, and he just told the group to go on without him. Nobody knows what happened to him at that point. But yeah.
I mean, 3 days starved and blind in the Sierra Nevadas.
Yeah, probably just...
Guaranteed he died.
Died right there. Now, a few days later, the group got caught in a blizzard, and they couldn't keep a fire lit, and 4 members of the group died, and...
Including the child.
I don't know, it doesn't say if it was a kid, but the rest of the group decided to resort to cannibalism. So they lived off those bodies.
Now, is this the group of 16?
Yes.
Okay.
No, 15.
You said...
5 men, 9 women, 1 child.
Yeah.
It's 15.
I thought you said 6 men.
But yeah, so they lived off the bodies of those who died, while going to Sutter's Fort, and by the time they reached safety, there was only 7 left. Only 2... Okay, well, this is confusing. Because it says before 5 men, but now right here in my notes it says only 2 of the 10 men survived. Where did they men come from? I don't know. All 5 women lived. Oh, I think they had the numbers backwards. I think it was 5 women, 10 men.
And the child.
The child. I know there was a kid because...
The child was male.
In last podcast on the left, they talk about how the kid, ate a mouse. Straight up. It was just running around and just gobbled it up. So, they made it there on January 19th, 1847. So, as soon as they made it there, everyone's like, okay, we need to go and help the Donner Party that's trapped. And then on February 5th, the first relief party of 7 men left, and then there's another party which was headed by James Reed, and they left 2 days later. And
James Reed was at the war.
We came back.
After the war?
Yeah.
This is still going on. A whole war has passed.
I don't know if the whole war has passed, but he was, done with the war. I think he was like, I gotta go. My family is trapped in the mountains. Help. But then on February 19th, the first party reached the lake, and what looked like they didn't think anybody was there. But at that point in time, 12 of the immigrants were dead, and there was 48 remaining, but many had gone crazy. Some of them were barely alive. But they couldn't get everybody out at the same time because they couldn't get any pack animals in, and they brought some food, but there wasn't a lot. But the first relief party left with 23 refugees, and during the party's travels back to Sutter's Fort, 2 more kids died.
So is there more cannibalism?
Yes.
Okay, I was gonna say, there's,
See, because when I first...
The data set that I used to do all my analysis with had quite a few people in it.
When I first heard about this, I thought it was 12 people. And I think that's what a lot of people originally think about the group that was headed over the mountain. But no, yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. So those people died, and then while that first group was going back, the Reed-led group was coming this way, and Reed was reunited with his family, and none of the Reeds died. They were all reunited.
Well, except for Mama Reed.
Yeah, but she was the mother-in-law Reed, so...
Oh, so she's worthless.
I wouldn't say worthless. She just isn't part of the Reed.
Oh, well,
clan.
mothers-in-laws are worthless.
Okay. On March 1st, a second relief party arrived at the lake, finding evidence of cannibalism. And then they arrived at Alder Creek to find that the Donners had also resorted to cannibalism. The Donners, so there was George Donner, and then I think it was his brother, whose name was Joshua, Joey, someone with a J, but he died, and then the kids ate him. But a lot of the moms would feed their kids people, but wouldn't tell them it was people, or the kids just got used to it and kind of thought it was normal to eat people. It's weird. It's messed up. On March 3rd, James Reed left the camp with 17 of the starving immigrants, but 2 days later they were caught in a blizzard. And then during that time, Isaac Donner had died, and most of the refugees were just too weak to travel. When this blizzard happened, Reed and then Hiram Miller, who was just another guy who's part of the group, they took 3 of the refugees with them to find food that they stored on the way, and the rest of them just stayed at what would be known as Starved Camp. Sounds great. On March 12th, the third relief, led by William Eddy and William Foster, reached Starved Camp, where Mrs. Graves and her son Franklin had also died. The 3 bodies, including that of Isaac Donner, had been cannibalized. Tasty. And the next day, they arrived at the lake camp, to find that both of their sons had died.
I like how just all these people are just...
dying.
Well, not only that, but I mean, they're finding these, this evidence of cannibalism, and they just seem kind of okay with it. It's all these individual parties resulted to cannibalism on their own. It's not
I know, it's not they're all one, they all become cannibals and then they separate and still go off of it. It's that bad.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I'd eat people in
that Family Guy episode where they're climbing Mount Everest and then they eat the son? Yeah. That guy's son, and they're like, we live, we survived. We ate your son.
Pretty sure that's also an American Dad bit.
Do they do it in American Dad?
I think, yeah, because it's kind of like a...
They did it on Family Guy, I know, because they said, it's weird how we ate a human before we ate the dog.
Yeah.
Because they make that joke.
Yeah, but in American Dad, they definitely do, because it's like Steve's girlfriend or whatever, like at the time, or whatever, and then they eat her.
Yeah, they also had pets that they ate here too, just so you know.
Oh yeah,
They just, this article just didn't say it. On March 14th, they arrived at Alder Camp, where George Donner was just dying from that infection in his hand. And his wife, Tamzine, just didn't want to leave him. So they sent on their kids, their 3 daughters, without them. And the relief party left. And then 2 rescuers, John Baptiste Trudeau and Nicholas Clark, left behind to care for the Donners. But they soon abandoned them and then catch up with the relief party. And then on the 4th rescue party set out in late March, but were soon stranded in a blinding snowstorm for several days. They reached camp on April 17th, and they found only Louis Keseberg alive among the mutilated remains of George Donner and his wife. And his wife was, like, fine. So what everyone thinks is that he killed them and ate them. Just because. And I think, like, on last
it was just because. Well, I mean, I wouldn't eat him because he's infected. I wouldn't want to eat infected meat. So you gotta kill the wife to kill the wife.
I guess so.
See, I mean, he could be like, hey, so we're starving, right? We either kill your husband and we both live, or I kill both of you and I live. Because he's not gonna make it. I get it. Lawless times.
So Keseberg was the last to arrive at Sutter's Fort on April 29th. Took 2 months and 4 relief parties to rescue the entire surviving Donner Party. So 2/3 of the men in the party perished, while 2/3 of the women and children lived. 41 individuals died, 46 survived. 5 had died before reaching the mountains. 35 died either at the mountain camps or trying to cross the mountains, and 1 died just after reaching the valley. Many of those who survived lost toes to frostbite. And then right after it happened, like, a lot of, like, newspapers, like, went crazy, talked about all this stuff, accused travelers of bad conduct, cannibalism, and murder. And, like, everybody was super ashamed of it because, you know, they ate their friends and family. So they all were like, no, we didn't do that. We didn't eat each other. That's not what actually happened. So a lot of things are like, oh no, they didn't actually eat each other. But more recent studies have shown that they most likely did. So after that, immigration to California, like, didn't really happen a lot. Hastings Cutoff was abandoned until, you know, the California Gold Rush. Then everybody came back to California.
That's how Nevada or Las Vegas came about.
So that's the Donner Party.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, like, scary. They eat their shoes too. That's some things I didn't mention. Like,
I mean, they're probably leather, realistically.
Yeah, but, like, the group that was snowshoeing through the mountains, like, ate their shoes, and then they were going through 20 feet of snow. So imagine eating your shoes and then going through 20 feet of snow barefoot. And, like, socks.
I mean, I get it. Like,
I don't think that's the moral of the story.
People, no. I mean, I don't care about morals. So, if you're dying, and as long as let's throw a tarp over this and say, as long as they eat the people that died, that's fine, fair game. They're not going to eat.
If they murdered the people to eat them,
then it's getting
sketchy.
Unless it was like, you know, we're gonna randomly select somebody.
Well, that's what happened with the group on the mountain that was going over the mountain first. I was telling you about this, like, the Irish guy, I think his name was, like, Lemuel Murphy. He wanted to do that. He was like, and nobody had died yet. And it had only been, like, 6 hours since they last ate. And he's like, let's just eat each other. We'll draw straws. Whoever draws the long one, like, we'll kill them and we'll eat them.
The short straw.
I think it was a long straw in this case. But anyway.
Why the fuck would you just...
He's Irish. Maybe it's an Irish thing. I don't know. But he was the one who drew it. And then he was like, you know what? Never mind. I don't think this is a good idea anymore. And then he ended up dying anyway and getting eaten anyway. So there's that.
Oh, still, he wasn't randomly... I mean, he was randomly selected, depending on your definition of random. But it's not like they followed through with that.
No, they didn't kill him. He just died because it was cold.
Yeah. So, still, unless there's like a predetermined, hey, I mean, I'm surprised they didn't eat the kids.
They're the kids.
Yeah. I mean, you can make more kids. You only have one self.
Okay. So, this was fun. Here's the bonus part of this episode. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. I went to Instagram and I asked you all if you wanted to hear my ghost story from when I think I saw a ghost. And you all overwhelmingly said yes. It was 100% of you voted yes. So here is my ghost story. And Kyler isn't here to record this part, so it's just me and you all. So a few weeks ago, I was driving home from work, and I work second shift, so I get off at 11. And I don't live far from my work. It's about a 10-minute drive. But about 2 or 3, maybe between 2 and 4 miles of the drive is through farmland, where there's a bunch of old farms, and there's not many streetlights. Like, there's a streetlight about every mile when there's an intersection, but that's it. And I was driving home, and it wasn't too dark. Like, it wasn't full moon bright, but it wasn't, like, new moon dark either. It was somewhere in the middle, and it wasn't foggy. It was, like, really, really clear night. So I was driving, and the car in front of me was, I would say it was about 100 feet, maybe 200 feet in front of me. And I was just following them, and then I see in the middle of the road a person. And my first thought wasn't, what is that person doing in the road? Because where I drive, there's mailboxes across the street. So I was like, maybe they're going to get their mail. My first thought was I was waiting for the car in front of me to swerve around this person. And they didn't. And I was just watching them, and that person was, like, in the middle of the road where the line was, and this car just passes them. And it wasn't, like, close enough that they would have hit them, but it was close enough that it was definitely dangerous. Like, a normal driver would have at least swerved, like, maybe, like, a foot or two, given that person some room. And they just kept driving and go past, and I was like, what are they doing? And then when I started approaching the person all of a sudden just disappears, and they were gone. And as soon as that happened, I was like, that was a ghost. There's no way that was a human being. But it looked like a person. And it, like, it was weird. And it had me, like, on edge. Like, the next day when I drove home, I was looking in the same area, looking around to see if I saw anything. But it was foggy that night, so it's like every mailbox I saw and everything, I was like, it's a person, it's a ghost. Like, oh, freaking out again. But that was my ghost story. And I looked online to see if I could find any, like, creepy, scary death stories on that road or in that area, but I couldn't. But there's just a bunch of, like, old farms there and land, so I'm sure something happened at some point in time. I told my coworker about it, and he was like, you know what they say, if there's a ghost near, the body's not too far. So I don't know what that means, but let me know what you think of my ghost story. Did I actually see a ghost? Was I just seeing things, or was it actually a person that just disappeared? I don't know. Let me know your thoughts. And now we can finish up the Donner Party. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at HMCT Podcast, on Twitter at Podcast HMCT. Go on the website, historiesmysteriesconspiracies.com for more good stuff. And that's everything. So, we'll see you next time. Be your weird self.
Bye.